to On the Playing Field. I am your host, Coach Cheryl McCormick. Now let's get to it. Hello, everybody. Cheryl McCormick here. Thank you so much for joining us again for our part 2 scenario-based applications to our first part where we were talking about the prefrontal cortex and what that means in high performance. So again, Cheryl McCormick, Coach McCormick for a lot of you that know me and athletes and coaches that I work with, and owner and founder of Gravitational Performance and School of Research Sports or Research Science. Couldn't get that out there right. All right. So today, real life understanding and practical implementation. Now, we've been talking about in the first half, the first part of this 2-part series is that prefrontal cortex and what that means in terms of the top-down processing and integrating some of these very common, if you will, skills and mental skills training, also known as that MST that we discussed in the first half. And those things might be things like mindfulness, imagery and visualization, positive self-talk, and so much more. Okay, so now let's transition. Okay, so from the education side, right? Because if you listen to the first half, then you understand I go through a 3-step process, and that's going to be the education, understanding what does this mean for me? I'm a sport professional, I'm a coach, I'm an athlete, I'm a high-performing individual. Maybe I'm in the military, maybe I'm a CEO, maybe I work for, whatever business it is. You're a manager, you work with a team of people. Okay, well, this means that that's for you and that you're a high-performing individual. Okay. And so we're focused on getting rid of that outside noise, that outside chatter, that extra stimuli that interrupts our ability to perform at high levels. Okay. So now let's transition to exploring these real life scenarios that many of you face that illuminate these concepts and demonstrate how you can actually integrate them into your daily training routines. So I want you to imagine a moment when you are about to maybe engage in a sequence of precise, coordinated movements. Okay, think about that. I want the environment to be dynamic. All right. There is an array of confusing stimuli, whether it's the coach over here or it's this person over here yelling, or maybe it's something going on up here. Okay, the room is noisy. Your head is noisy. Unexpected elements are present, but your objective really remains singular and focused. In that critical moment, your prefrontal cortex is hard at work using that top-down processing to determine which pieces of sensory input are actually necessary for guiding your movement and which should be actually silenced. Okay, so picture an example where an individual is maybe preparing for a sequence requiring rapid fluid coordinations, perhaps something like an explosive shift in that posture followed by that immediate precise of execution on a planned sequence. Okay, maybe it's a team sport that you're in, maybe it's yourself. So before the movement begins, the individual, maybe this is you, takes a deep controlled breath. A simple but powerful cue, okay, is implemented. This pause is not accidental. It is an intentional signal that activates that pre-performance routine, if you will, okay, and is developed over time, as I mentioned in the first half, through consistent mental skills practice. It is a moment where focus really aligns with intention, even as the environment may throw distractions in so many different ways. Maybe a loud noise or a sudden shift in the ambient lighting, maybe, right? If you're outside, all of a sudden it starts sprinkling, but they're like, nope, the game's still going. The athlete's mind really stays anchored into the internal cues. All right, and the feeling of muscle readiness, the intended rhythm, if you will, of motion, okay, of that movement again, how the body moves at different times, and that anticipated proprioceptive signals and that really confirm that proper form, that proper body alignment that's necessary in your sport. Again, maybe if you're not in sports and you're like, well, this doesn't make sense to me, but it does. Think about maybe how you're standing, your body alignment, your posture, right? How you're speaking, how you're presenting yourself. Think about if you're nervous, what are things that you might do? What are things that you might not do that would be normal to you if you weren't nervous? So now envision a coach now envision a coach that is maybe focused on putting together, we'll just say that, a session that specifically challenges both the physical and that mental resilience. That session begins with a dual task drill. So athletes are asked to perform maybe a series of dynamic, explosive movements, rapidly accelerating and then decelerating and then changing directions while simultaneously engaging in a mental, challenge or calling out a simple rhythm of some sort. So notice the physiological aspects that might take place there. Okay. The athletes are not simply moving, they are integrating a cognitive challenge alongside their physical performance. So, a lot of sports psychologists, a lot of mental coaches will actually work alongside a team at times after the implementation phases, after the education phases, and they will work together with the athletes. So then we can put that to play. So then they understand what it feels like oh, that's what it is. I get it. Okay. So the purpose of this drill is to actually, again, simulate that real life situation where those movements and decision making actually occur together simultaneously. Right. So, with continued practice, you actually learn to prioritize internally driven signals of that technique, whatever technique it is that you're using in your sports, measured movements and physical coordination over any external interruptions, okay, which we already know we're going to always have those. So, this method trains that prefrontal cortex again to really focus on what matters the most during that needed motion, if you will. So let's dive further into practical everyday scenarios that apply these concepts specifically. So imagine that you're in a high intensity practice session where the body is constantly signaling fatigue and distractions, both internally and externally. So begin to consider what that might feel like in the body. Might maybe want to consider, mentally what that also feels like, because mentally we know that when our body begins to feel tired, right, our legs are getting heavy. Track athlete, okay, track athlete, all right, and or distance athlete or anything for that matter. Maybe you're a swimmer, maybe you're a tennis player, okay, whatever it is. Think about it. When that specific muscle in your body is used, then all of a sudden your mind feels it even more so. Okay. So, what does that mean? Well, now my quads, my legs feel heavy. I'm tired. I don't know that I can keep going. And that is psychological. We feel the pain, the physiological aspects, then we feel the sensing, the nerves, and our mind telling us, you're done. So, in that instance, you might have developed a personal cue. Okay, this is what I like to tell my athletes, have a mantra, set that cue word, a specific sequence of breath and movement, such as inhaling deeply, pausing for a moment, and using a deliberate exhalation. So, releasing, you're doing a deep belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, no shallow breathing, meaning just chest, and you're right? That's what we see athletes do when they're really, really tired and they just can't draw that air in. But that's where you've got to practice doing that. So that really resets your focus. So, this simple physiological routine is something that you have rehearsed over time. So, think about that. This is something that's not just done at once. It becomes a powerful tool that not only calms your racing thoughts, but also synchronizes that body's response, right? It's telling your muscles, let's go. The muscles are ready. The nerve signals are clear. You're feeling okay. I'm going to be okay. I've trained a long time for this. I think I can do this. Okay. Even though you're pressured, even though that you're winded, even though the noisy environment is maybe kind of starting to get to you, you are centered and you're prepared. Why? Because you've been practicing this. This isn't an overnight thing. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Okay. Another situation might involve a decision making moment during a period of rapid movement. Now, if you're an athlete in here, you might be saying, well, coach, this is something that I'm constantly doing. Well, then listen up. Imagine an athlete engaged in a complex maneuver that requires a split second decision about the next move. Perhaps it's a quarterback. I know I work with a lot of quarterbacks and that is something like, I threw to the wrong person. I threw the wrong way. It slipped. I was too short in my throw, right? I wasn't quick enough. It wasn't on time. A moment where hesitation could actually disrupt that flow of movement. And that hesitation obviously is going to be like, well, I wonder why I hesitated because I doubted myself, because I heard something else. At that critical juncture, that positive self-talk, that PST becomes that lifeline. It becomes familiar for you. Instead of getting overwhelmed of what might could go wrong, the athlete actually verbally internalizes and internally says, focus on that rhythm. Trust your preparation. You've got this. I've got this, right? This self-generated cue, if you will, leverages that top-down mechanism by reaffirming the pre-established mental routine and activating those neural networks that prioritize essential motor control over the peripheral distractions, okay, or the noise that goes on in our head. So, for coaches and trainers, the real life implementation of these techniques can be woven into every session. I mentioned that in the first half of the series. So, start with maybe a structured warm up that incorporates a brief period of mindfulness. What does that mean? We're visual, we're here. We can do this. We're going to do great today. Maybe we had a stressful day. Maybe we've got a lot of homework. Maybe things going on at home and personal life, but we're here. And we're here to work together. We're here to come together and support each other. That's that team dynamic, that team cohesion that I love to talk about. Have athletes close their eyes for a moment, focus on that breathing and that visualization of those upcoming moments with complete clarity, complete understanding, complete trust in themselves. Use a language that actually encapsulates these physical sensations during certain movements, during certain challenges and stressors and times. And you can describe the contraction of the muscles, which muscles are being used, the shifting of the body weight, and that smooth transition that you want your athletes to have from one movement to the next. So by doing so, you're not only training the body, but also coordinating the mind to connect with these micro movements and every time they perform and every time you want them to execute flawlessly. All right. In another session, simulate unexpected changes during drills. So, for example, while athletes are engaged in a coordinated movement routine, you can introduce a sudden auditory cue or a quick change in that pattern. Okay, something that they're going to hear. So ask them to acknowledge the cue, but then quickly return their attention to that predetermined movement sequence. That's a great way to integrate some of these mental skills, if you will. So after the drill, take time with the group for a reflective discussion. So I like to ask questions such as, how did you feel when that unexpected noise happened or occurred? What internal cues helped you actually regain that focus that you needed? This debriefing really enforces not only the concepts that is possible to reset and realign that attention, but also just building togetherness, building that team camaraderie, if you will, building openness and communication and the trust that these athletes really, really need. Okay. And also identifying when external conditions can actually impact their performance. So for many, these strategies extend well beyond physical performance. So consider a situation in your everyday life where you must execute a complex task, perhaps maybe a presentation or even managing a high pressure pressure, couldn't get that out. Project. Okay. Because we know that we're always doing that in the workplace. So the same principles apply. Again, these are interchangeable. I said that in the first recording, if you will. Okay. These are interchangeable. Mental skills training can be definitely interchangeable. We tend to work with athletes and on the things of like goal and communication and trust and self-discipline. But hey, all of us need it too, right? All of us need to say, well, I need that as a professional. I need that as a mom. I need that as a coach. I need that as an athlete. Okay. So a brief pause to engage in deep breathing can be coupled with maybe a moment of visualization to confirm your sequence of tasks, can actually sharpen your focus, get rid of some of that performance anxiety, reduce any of those just pre-jitters, if you will, uncertainty, doubt. This isn't just for athletes, as I've said. It's for any high performing individual who wants to excel under pressure and to not feel so overwhelmed. Think about that. Who wants to go into performance and actually be overwhelmed? Who wants to deploy in a very high stress situation and feel the pressure to perform and worry, I'm going to get fired. I might not come back. I might not win. I might not make that team. This is my final year in school and ability to play sports. Right? If you don't like those feelings, then why aren't you doing this? So that physiological response, whether it's controlled deep breathing or mindfulness, that feeling of steady muscles, ready for action, it's really universal. It's for everybody. So as we approach the end of this segment, it's really important to integrate that mental training. Okay, that mental training is not separate from the physical training. It really is a critical part of it. And I know that a lot of coaches, as I've said, they really just don't have much time. And here it is too. I work with several coaches, and it's unfortunate. Our school systems don't really have the funding to bring in a qualified sport professional at that level. That's where I'm making this for you. I've worked with schools for several years now, coaches, athletes, parents, sport professionals, and I have been integrating this process as a sport professional, qualified one, and continued education opportunities for our coaches and support team, because I understand it is extremely expensive, and to require to request a parent to go out and seek extra and to be able to afford, working with a sports psychologist or a sport performance specialist can be very costly. So jump on this opportunity, take notes here, reach out to me if you have questions. I'm always willing to assist, help, and, also refer out to other qualified sport professionals that I work with. But as we approach the end of this really is important to reiterate that mental performance, that mental training into your physical training. And it is a critical part of it. When you understand how your mind shapes your movement as an athlete, when you have respect for that, you gain a powerful tool for enhancing that performance. Okay. By practicing these techniques regularly, not just at the last minute. And even for my athletes, you hear me, you cannot do this last minute. And you know that. Okay. By practicing these techniques regularly helps develop a level of sense of consistency too, right? But we know that in sport, there's no athlete that's just always consistent. Things happen. Okay. We're moving the body in ways that it wasn't necessarily meant to be moved. Okay. But we're capable, and you're capable of getting in control of this. You can prepare your brain. You can prepare yourself to be calm, decisive. You can be that decisive director when faced with unpredicted challenges, all that loud sound, all that craziness that goes on all around us when we're about to perform, even up here. Okay, so remember, each time you incorporate a moment, I couldn't get that out either. I think I'm done. A focused breathing, visualization, or positive self talk, you are actually strengthening those neural networks that support that precise, efficient motion that is necessary in sport performance, high performance industries, etc. So, altogether, whether you're executing a rapid coordinated movement or really recovering from quickly from a mishap, you made a mistake, completely fine, right? Those mistakes help us build ourselves back up. The strength of your mental routines really direct your influences to that physical performance. Okay. So by incorporating these dual task drills, reflective debriefings, simple yet powerful, really, routines in your sport performance, like mindful breathing and visualization, you can condition your prefrontal cortex to filter out any of that unnecessary noise and really maintain focus. So this, again, isn't about eliminating all distractions, because we want to say a lot of distractions prepare us, right? They put us in check. They allow our bodies to say, oh, I'm getting to work. Instead of us having that fear factor, which is not part of these series, we will get into that at another time. Instead of having that fear factor drown you, embrace that fear factor, right? Tell yourself that mentally. Add that into some of your mental imagery. Embrace the fear factor. Allow yourself to say, you know what? I'm excited to do this, even if you're shaking and you're just losing it. Okay? Think about that. It's about training your brain to rise above, then, so that every physiological movement is executed in clarity at optimal and precise levels. Thank you for your attention today. I encourage you to integrate these strategies into your training or daily routines. Notice the difference it makes, actually, not just in your movement, but in your overall mental resilience as well, and that mental toughness. As you continue to apply these practices and these principles, you will find that the blend of the mind and body becomes seamless and powerful, forcing together as as you progress in your performance from day to day.